You ever drive by one of those massive power plants and just wonder, how in the world did that get built? I mean, these are multi-billion-dollar projects, absolutely essential for our daily lives, but they are a colossal financial gamble. So who's putting up that kind of cash, and what on earth gives them the confidence to build something that's supposed to run for the next 30 years? Well, the answer comes down to a single, incredibly powerful document.
Right, this is the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? It's not just about finding some investors. You have to convince banks, governments, and construction companies that this massive investment is going to get paid back, reliably, for decades. The risk is just huge, so the solution has to be absolutely rock solid.
And that solution is a document called a Power Purchase Agreement, or a PPA for short. At its heart, it's a really long-term contract that guarantees one simple, crucial thing. The electricity that this plant is going to produce already has a guaranteed buyer at a price they've already agreed on. This document is the bedrock of the entire project.
The easiest way to think about it is like a prenup for a business marriage that's going to last for 20 or 30 years. It lays out every single rule of the relationship ahead of time. Who does what, how the money gets paid, what happens if things go south. It creates the certainty that everybody needs before they'll sign on the dotted line.
So, to really understand the power of this prenup, we need to take a look at the anatomy of the project itself. All the key players involved and the critical promises that hold the whole thing together. Now, a power project's life spans decades, right? But the most critical moment, the real make-or-break point, happens right here, at the beginning. The PPA gets signed before a single piece of concrete is ever poured. It's the foundational promise that unlocks every other step, from getting the loans to starting construction.
And that PPA is never just floating out there on its own. It sits at the absolute heart of this complex web of other contracts. You can think of the PPA as the sun, and its gravitational pull holds every other agreement in orbit. The loans from the banks, the deals with fuel suppliers, the construction contracts, everything.
So, what's actually in this prenup? Well, it's a tale of two promises. The seller, that's the project company, they promise to build the plant, operate it, get all the permits, and deliver the power reliably. In return, the buyer, who's usually the national utility company, makes one giant promise. We will pay for that power, on time, for the entire life of the contract. All of these promises, they lead to one of the most important concepts in this whole world, bankability. A project is only bankable if lenders are willing to pour hundreds of millions or even billions into it, and when they're making that decision, they are laser-focused on one document above all others, the PPA.
This quote from the World Bank just says it all. For a project that costs billions, there's only one source of income to pay back those loans, the payments that are guaranteed by the PPA. If that revenue stream isn't 100% secure, the project is completely dead in the water. No PPA, no money. It's really that simple.
You see, for the lenders, the PPA's job is simple. It eliminates uncertainty. It gives them a predictable, long-term stream of revenue. It locks in a fixed price for the electricity. It clearly says who's responsible for what when things go wrong, and it guarantees that there's always going to be a buyer for the power. This is the certainty they need to write those massive checks.
Okay, so we've got the general idea down. Now let's see how this all applies in the real world. We're going to take a look at how Vietnam has just taken this entire process and written it into a new national rulebook for its energy sector. It's a perfect example of how countries try to attract all that global investment.
This is it, Circular 07. It was just issued by Vietnam's Ministry of Industry and Trade, and it became effective on June 1, 2024. You can basically think of this as the official instruction manual for how every future power purchase agreement in the country is going to be negotiated and structured.
So what does it actually do? Well, three main things. First, it defines the one official method for calculating electricity prices. No more guessing. Second, it provides a mandatory sample PPA contract, a template that everyone has to start from. And third, it sets the whole legal framework for how the power companies and the national utility have to hammer out their final deal.
Now, maybe the most critical part of this whole circular is how it defines the price of electricity. So let's take a quick peek at the core formulas, because this is where all that theory really becomes practice.
Whoa! Okay, that right there is the official formula for the monthly payment. I know, it looks super intimidating, but don't worry, we're not going to do any math. In simple terms, it's just a very structured way of adding up all the real-world costs.
Let's just break that down. That complicated formula is just making sure all the legitimate costs are covered. It includes payments based on market rates, payments for just having the plant available, its capacity, and specific costs like connecting to the grid. It even includes environmental costs, like dealing with ash for thermal plants. Plus, of course, all the taxes.
All right, this next formula tackles one of the absolute biggest risks in any international project: currency fluctuation. See, when you borrow in dollars but you sell your product in a local currency, even tiny changes can be disastrous over 30 years.
Here's why this matters so much. These huge power projects are often funded in US dollars, but they earn their money in the local currency, which in this case is the Vietnamese dong. Now, over 30 years, if the exchange rate shifts, and it will, the project could lose millions. So what this formula does is build in an automatic price adjustment to neutralize that currency risk, and that is absolutely essential to making the project bankable for foreign lenders.
So ultimately, what documents like a PPA and regulations like Vietnam's Circular 07 are trying to do is strike this very, very delicate balance. On one hand, they have to create enough certainty and protection to attract billions in private investment. But on the other hand, they have to protect the public interest and make sure people get reliable, fairly priced electricity.
And that leaves us with a final question to think about. In this whole intricate dance of finance, engineering, and law, who really holds the power? Is it the massive companies that actually build and operate the plants? Or is it the governments and regulators who write the rulebook that everybody has to follow? It's something to consider the next time you flip a switch.